Hey everybody, my name is Dylan Young, and today I've got a very special interview for you. After I've trained Jiu-Jitsu and Judo for multiple years now, I've had interactions with a lot of black belts on the mat and people who had a wealth of knowledge. And a lot of times I ask technique questions or stuff related to Judo, pretty specific. But a lot of those times I don't get the opportunity to ask questions that might be stuff outside of Judo, or how you got started in this career, or what's it like owning a gym, questions like that. So I had the idea that I could get these black belts and I could interview them and ask them the questions that I've always wanted to ask them, or the things that I was curious about. And then I could upload it and put it online and share it with the rest of you. And so today's day one of that. I've got Sensei Brett Wolf from the Menomonee Judo Club in Chicago, my judo coach, who I train with multiple times a week. He's got a very decorated career, has coached all around the world at the highest of levels, has seen a lot of things. He's coached Olympians. He's a great guy, great coach, great to train with. And so I'm really happy to have him. We had a great conversation. I hope you like it. So, we could start off with the beginning. You've been doing judo your whole life. What got you to start?
Yeah, so I have for all but 5, 6 years of my entire life, which is I'm older than I'd like to admit. My father put me in to judo. He had no experience whatsoever, but a guy he grew up with, who lived in the same building as he did, was a student of Sensei Hank Okamura, and for many years was the founding father of judo here in Chicago and a true legend. And he told my dad it would be a good activity for me for coordination, for strength, for confidence. So yeah, my dad put me in one class a week on Saturday afternoons to the Lawson YMCA on Chicago Avenue, and I was under Hank's tutelage for a few years. And guy made a huge difference in my life. Like I said, a true legend. And I actually started the club at Menomonee before I did, and so it's also an honor for me to be able to kind of build off of the work that he had already put in years and years ago. So that, yeah, it just was kind of a chance thing, and it stuck. It didn't look like it would for many years, but it's just become like a lifelong journey. I mean, for me, it's like a lifestyle. So yeah, I love it. So yeah,
That's incredible. How old were you when you started?
about 5 years old. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I won't say who was the president at that time because then I'll be dating myself. But it was many, many moons ago. But yeah, 5 years old, once a week, Saturday afternoons at Lawson. I'll never forget it. Great times, great memories.
So you started at 5, and you had mentioned before that you started at 0 and 14 in your tournaments.
Yeah, I'm not something I'm embarrassed about at all. I mean, maybe a little, but this was the 1980s where parents had a lot more say in kids and their activities and whether you quit something. Nowadays, kids have one bad day, they could tell their parents are going to quit, and a lot of parents will just allow them to. And that's not being judgmental on parents. Not that parenting would be easy, but my father certainly wasn't going to allow that. So for whatever reason, and I was thinking about that because I knew you'd probably touch on that subject. It's weird that I did lose every match for so long because I've always been a good athlete and I've always been competitive. So I don't even know why. It's just kind of a weird, chancy thing. But at some point, I mean, obviously I wasn't very good, but I wanted to quit multiple times. But my father said he'd allow me to quit once I won. Back then, like now, most tournaments are double elimination. So 7 tournaments, 0-2 at 7 straight tournaments. And in the eighth tournament, I finally won 2 matches and got a bronze. And then I didn't want to quit, which I think my dad probably knew would happen. And that gave me the confidence and the wherewithal to kind of keep going and build off that. And then I became a competitive, junior, both regional and national, and even eventually international level player. But yeah, 0 and 14s. Yeah, I wear it as a badge of honor.
It's incredible. And then just to think, if you would have given up
Yeah,
one match earlier.
who knows what I'd be doing for a living now? Yeah, exactly. I mean, things happen for a reason. And I like that version. I see a few of our parents at the club who I consider like old school or 1980s style parents. And I really appreciate and respect that. And again, parenting's difficult and everybody's got their own way. And it's certainly not my job to judge. But I like that hardcore, old school. I think it teaches you something, a little backbone and some stick to itiveness. So yeah, I'm very blessed that he didn't let me quit. and he was a huge influence. Never did a day of judo in his life, but knew a ton about judo, loved the sport, and obviously played such a significant role in my judo journey because yeah, he started me there and was very supportive till he passed away just 3 years ago. Dearly missed. But yeah, 0-14. It probably took me a couple of years to lose 14 matches combined after that, but we had a very strong region back then in the mid 80s here in Chicago. Some of the players I had to play on a weekly basis: Scotty Rice, very high level player, senior national champion; John Kading, same thing, NCAA wrestling champion at a much higher weight; Ryan Green was a great player; Tony Esposito, and my best friend at the time, and one of my best friends still, Tony Dangerfield, all top players. And that's who I had to face. So it's not like I was losing, you know, to ham and eggers. I was losing to great players. And yeah, it helped me. A lot of times we'd go to nationals, and because there was two national governing bodies at that time, USJA and USJI, and a lot of the tougher guys in our area went to USJA. So I'd go to the USJI Nationals, which were the Junior Olympics, and I'd do better than I do at local tournaments because I didn't have to face those guys. So yeah, it prepared me for very tough competition.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy. You started at 5. I started, I think I was 21 when I started judo. And I'm just like, man, if I could have started even a couple years earlier, how much that would have impacted my game.
Well, well, Howard started at 46, right? Your teammate
Right.
and blind, but it's true. I will say, even with talented athletic players, and I consider you one of them, those who start as young adults, it's a little bit longer of a process. There's stuff that some people do instinctively that have done judo their entire life that might take that split second to think about, or you miss an opening. Doesn't necessarily stop you or hurt you against lower level opposition, but if you're fighting national level players, it's tough. But it's certainly something that can be worked through. And there's a lot of stories people starting as adults compete at the highest level nationally. So yeah, I'm glad I started young, but again, I took my licks, and yeah, and I stopped playing. That's the difference. I stopped playing as an adult. My last tournament was, I think I was 27, and I was done. 26 or 20, and I wasn't even playing consistently then. I did that more in a lark. Some of my friends were like, "Hey, you got to fight." But yeah, I started coaching very young. Sensei Hank, again, maybe the legend of Chicago judo. Multiple clubs, just inspired and taught so many athletes over the years and people, and just a great man. He had a stroke in '93 that
Mm.
debilitated him. And so my buddy, Tony Dangerfield, I'd mentioned earlier, at 18, took over the Menomonee Judo Club and brought me in to assist him because he was 18 and left for, I wouldn't say greener, but different pastures, different career path in '98. And I took over, and I really wanted to focus in my early 20s. I saw Tony, especially at local tournaments, he would try to coach our 20 athletes, 15, 20 athletes in the morning and then compete in seniors in the afternoon. He was exhausted. I felt like it affected his judo. He was a tremendously talented player. He got third at senior nationals in around 2000, the early 2000s, or late 90s, maybe even at 73. It might have been 71 kilos then still, but at middleweight, light middleweight, and there was almost 70 athletes in the division at senior nationals, which never happens nowadays. You'll hear people now, if there's a division of 25 and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I have 25 athletes. He got third out of 70, and he only lost one match that day. He lost to Todd Bray, who was a hell of a player. Didn't make nearly as many teams as he should have because his buddy, Jimmy Pedro, was in that division and was always obviously ahead of him. But yeah, so Tony took over. And once he left, I took over Menomonee, and the rest has been 27 plus years of history at this point. So
Wow, that's awesome. And so you started judo at a young age, and then you also grew up with your sister being a Olympic athlete and competing in the 96 and 2000 Olympics. What was that like?
yeah, so my sister, she retired at 23. So I think sometimes, it's been a quarter century now. It was her last tournament was the Sydney Olympics in 2000. So next month or September will be a quarter century, or this month maybe. Um, so people forget some of her accomplishments, but she's one of the most decorated judo players in U.S. history. There's just no doubt about it. She's not only made two Olympic teams, but at two separate weight divisions. The second one coming off an ACL tear that she had to obviously have surgically repaired and then compete. She also is one of just three U.S. judoka to win the Junior World Championships, which I think is one of the five toughest judo tournaments in the world, including senior tournaments. I think the Junior Worlds is just an unbelievably difficult tournament. And the other two are the huge UFC stars, Kayla Harrison and Ronda Rousey. But my sister was first, 94 in Cairo. She won the Junior Worlds. And it wasn't so difficult necessarily being more in the shadow because she earned everything that she got. She's super hard worker, mentally super tough. I think she was U.S. senior national champion at 14 years old. I think she won senior nationals. She was a really, really tough competitor and accomplished a great deal in a short time. Really a prodigy. Started fighting senior adults at 13, 14 years old. My dad started taking her first nationally and then internationally. And yeah, just it's great. I mean, she was a hard worker. And again, every accolade that she gets remembered a lot because of her acting, which she was also a child actress. But the reality is, her judo career stands on its own with most people who've ever played judo in the U.S. Either you can, she's up there for sure.
That's awesome. And so were you guys close enough in age that you were able to train together?
We have a 3.5 year age difference. I'm older, but there was size wise, we trained at the club together, but we didn't do rounds or anything like that. No, I mean, I
Mhm.
was always a lot bigger. She fought 45 kilos when she first moved into seniors, and then 48 kilos, and topped out at 52 for her second Olympics. So no. And then she'd also switched clubs to take her judo competitively to the next level. She went up to Uptown, which became Cohen Brothers Judo, and trained with Stephen Irwin Cohen. And I was still training in the city at BTC in Uptown, another fantastic club. And then she moved pre Atlanta to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs to train with Ed Liddy, the group out there. So yeah, we were on the mat together a lot, but no, seldom did we drill or train together. She was too tough for me anyway, so it was better for it was a no-win situation. So yeah.
Gotcha. Did you get to go to the any of the Olympics?
Both. Yeah, both. Not only did I see her compete in Atlanta, we had a huge group in Atlanta of 30 plus, I think, people because it was in the country and it was the Centennial Games. And it was, she had a lot of support for Atlanta and went to the opening ceremonies, which was an unbelievable experience when Muhammad Ali lit the torch. I mean, super cool. And my mom and I went much smaller group to Sydney because it's just such a far and expensive
Mhm.
and time change. It was just difficult travel, but also did the opening ceremony for Sydney and saw her compete. Yeah, she fought well in Atlanta. She won her first match against Chinese Taipei, I think Taipei now, and then lost to Cuba, Savone, one of the great 48 kilo players of all time, but always seemed to lose to the greatest 48 kilo player of all time, Tamura from Japan, and then lost an iffy tactical match in repecharge to the Algerian player. Otherwise, she might have fought, close to a medal. She was young, and then in Sydney, she fought five-time world champion from North Korea. Her first match, who beat Tamura in Atlanta, and then in repechard, she was pulled through. She fought Gravenstein from Netherlands, a really big, strong, talented 52. So yeah, she's competitive with anybody. But yeah, great experiences. I mean, Atlanta was really cool because she was able. Judo was later, so she was able to walk in the opening ceremony. And when you're walking in
Mhm.
the opening ceremony with your delegation, and the Olympics are in your country, I think that's a really cool experience. Not only obviously for the athlete, but for the family. And then Sydney just being able to support what ended up being her last tournament. So yeah, it was great. Like I said, super hard worker, super tough mentally and physically as a competitor, and skilled as well. So she was, yeah, just a great competitor.
Yeah, it must have been pretty awesome getting to see that. I remember in the 96 Olympics in Atlanta, there was the bomb issue. Were you around for that or?
We were in Atlanta, but we were not at Centennial Park that day. I mean, it was big news, obviously, but we were not down in that area. And, I mean, obviously, and certainly post 9/11, there's much greater concerns being in open spaces and huge public gatherings. But I mean, you just have to be aware of your surroundings. So, yeah, of course, Richard Jewell, the whole story. But we weren't there that day. But yeah, seeing it on the news was kind of scary. But yeah, it didn't affect us and our experience, really. But obviously, for the people it did, that's terrible. And it's a lasting impression of the Atlanta Games, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. And then you had mentioned she was a child actress as well, and she was in Home Alone.
Yeah, she was, I think, in the first two Home Alones. Yeah, she had some other movies where she was actually the lead actress. Could have very well been a very successful actress for a longer time, but chose the judo path. That was the path she wanted. She chose probably the far more difficult path, and yeah, deserves all the credit for that. But yeah, she got a lot of notoriety for that. But as I said earlier, her judo career stands on its own for sure, 100%.
And was she the big sister in Home Alone, or which character was she?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not a big Home Alone watcher. If I'm being honest, but I think she might have been the older. Yeah, I don't. You'd have to look it up. That's not my go-to holiday movie. So I don't know, but I think so. I think you're right there.
Probably about once every 4 or 5 years around Christmas time, and then I don't watch it again.
Everybody watches. I mean, it's a super one of the more popular movies of all time. So yeah, I don't know why I don't watch it, but yeah, I'm probably watching Christmas Story or It's a Wonderful Life too much. So
So you had talked about how you had started running the Menomonee Judo Club at a young age. That probably had to have been pretty scary or pretty intimidating. What was that really like for you?
yeah, so Tony did a fantastic job taking over in very difficult circumstances because Sensei Okamura's stroke was very debilitating and he was not going to be able to come back and run the club. And it was it was more of a program than a club. It was a club, but he'd built something and it would have, without him, Tony stepping up at 18, imagine that, it would have ended. And I certainly wouldn't have been in this position where I am now. When Tony left, it's funny, having that control over the program. And obviously, there's some perks being the head instructor, especially of a club, a for profit. It's not for profit, but for profit. When Tony left in between sessions in the late winter, early spring of 98, and I remember telling him, please don't leave. I was so happy being the assistant. I didn't really want to step up at that point because Tony is a big personality, very gregarious guy, really excellent judoka. And I was happy him delegating to me what students he wanted me to work with, what he wanted to work with. So I probably was very scared. I remember telling him, please don't leave. But when he did leave and I took over more on a trial basis, the club's executive director, who showed a ton of faith in first Tony and then myself, who passed away either very early last year. Yeah, I think it was very early 2024. Neil Bader, who was the executive director at Menomonee for almost 35 years, maybe more than 35 years, maybe it was 36. He basically told me that it was a 10-week trial to see if I could, they maybe would switch to Taekwondo or, because he didn't, I was young as the assistant, I didn't have a ton of responsibility. So I had to prove myself to Neil, and it was a natural fit for me. I just loved it from the first day. I really kind of said to myself, even when as the assistant, I said, I really kind of want to be a judo coach. I think this is what I want to be, and make it work. Then the question was how to make it work, which was never easy, just because judo's, such a big sport worldwide, so popular. But here in the States, it's just never gained that much traction as much as it should. Certainly post 60s, 70s, where I think it was big. CJBBA, the local black belt organization, was huge under Sensei Okamura, had multiple states, multiple thousands of members, and now my understanding CJBBA is more of a fledgling organization. But yeah, I was concerned. I had to learn on the go, but it was a great fit for me personality wise, and I truly feel like it's what I should be doing with my life. And so if you're passionate about it, you believe in yourself. I had to fake it at the beginning for sure, but that's what they say, fake it till you make it. And then I over time learned what worked for me. I had some great instructors, not just Hank Okamura, who was my first, but so many great instructors. I then went just really quickly to Kokushkan Judo in Skokie, Illinois, under Sensei Yoshinaga, who passed away within the last year. Very hard, very tough man from Kokushkan University in Japan. And then I moved to Uptown, the dojo in Uptown, BTC, where a lot of the Japanese American senseis who had been in the internment camps at the end of World War II were my senseis, and some unbelievable mentors and senseis, instructors. Dick Fukuyama, Tom Watanabe, Ernie Watanabe, Kei Naramatsu. I'm going to forget too many good people. Jim Kogan, Hollis Barnett. I've had so many good senseis who believed in me. I've tried to take a lot of what I've learned from them and then bring my own, personality to the club, because I'm there 5-6 days a week for 30 years. You want it to be somewhere you're comfortable, but I never have forgotten all the lessons that these unbelievable men have taught me. I mean, really just fantastic instructors. I've been blessed to be at 3 clubs, 4 including Menomonee, with some just legendary figures in both Chicago judo and in Hank's case, national and international judo.
It's definitely clear that you love judo, you love doing it, but when did you realize that you wanted it to be a career? Like when did that transition happen?
Yeah, never. Not at that stage. I stopped competing actually, to go to college, and only came back. I really wasn't even very active when Tony asked me to come back to help him in the interim after Sensei Okamura's stroke. And that's when I realized I loved to do it. When I was playing, I never thought million years. First of all, I didn't see myself as that level. At that time, I probably thought you had to be a super high level player to be a good coach, which doesn't. There's super high level players who are great coaches. That's not. There's no. It's not a negative for sure, but it's not a prerequisite to be able to coach high level athletes. And so yeah, I think when I took over as the assistant for Tony and did that for a couple years, I thought it's what I enjoyed doing the most. I had a few other jobs, runner at the Board of Trade, a few other random things through college, but I wasn't passionate about them. And I'm somebody, if I don't have some type of passion towards a task, a goal, a job, I just, it's very tough for me to be all in. And so with the judo, it was all in. But I will say the one seminal moment was even before Tony had left, summer of '97. I had a family, 2 very talented athletes who were at the club, and the nationals were in Chicago. And Tony, love him to death. I don't think he thought of the Menomonee players as other than maybe him, who certainly was a national level player, um, really to push them to be national players. We don't do judo, as you know. We don't do judo during the summer at Menomonee, at least with the kids. It's just the way the schedule's always been. And so the nationals are always or into July usually. And so you can't go a month without training and competing. So this family asked if I'd train the 2 children. And then we had a third athlete, 2 from the club, to get them ready for this nationals. And, I said, sure. And so I did run my own program for 4 or 5 weeks. And the athletes actually did a great job. We won a bronze medal. One player, he was middle weight boy. So you're always going to have very tough divisions. But he won 3 matches, including beating a kid from Cohen's who he'd never beaten before. And so I think that moment might have also been really important that, you know what, these kids can compete at a high level. Just because we're at a boys and girls club in the mid, near the Gold Coast, doesn't mean we can't compete. So that was a pretty important summer. Tony was still there, but within 6 months of that, he decided he had to take other career opportunities. And so right around that time, I decided I'd like to make it work, but I had no clue how to make it work at that time.
One thing that I think is pretty interesting about your practices is that it's most traditional practices are you drill a move, well, you warm up, then you drill the moves, and then maybe you do a couple different techniques, and then maybe you do randori and spar at the end. But yours, I would say there's most of the time there's not really a technique. You let the athletes pick what they want to do, like just work on moves, and then I get to pick what technique I'm working on. And I think that's really empowering. I get to kind of work on what I'm working on. And just curious on what your thoughts are on that type of practice.
Yeah, I think we're different than a lot of clubs in that regard. I don't love, I mean, with the kids, we have no choice because we're starting like on an empty, easel, completely from scratch. So we've got to teach them foundational techniques and go step by step. With the teens and adults, your practices, I do like the concept of learning by doing. Totally understand that a lot of high level black belts want to go step by step by step, and that's not incorrect. I'd say that's what most clubs do. So I don't in no way am looking down on that. We do that, but for me, I feel like my input's better as I walk across the mat. If I see you do your sumi, or if I see player A doing a drop seoi, player C doing a uchi, if I can give my 2 cents to all three of those, one thing very important, and another difference I think at our club than most, is your practices, which are our top practices. Our youngest athlete is 8 years old, and our oldest athlete is in his 60s, or when our one of our military veterans come, could even be in their 70s. Nobody else, I shouldn't say nobody because I'm not on the mat, very few clubs probably have that diverse of an age and level class than we do. And that's probably very difficult to come to a medium between an 8 year old. By the way, our 8 year old is our best player right now. And at Nationals, won 3 gold medals and a silver, in part because he trains with you guys. I think if I had him in an 8 year old judo class, he wouldn't have had the success he had at the Junior Olympics this year. But yeah, I just like teaching that way. I don't like to be the center of attention. I don't like to sit there and have 25 of you looking at my techniques, which I don't even think, other than maybe the Tayo, I should be showing step by step by step, to be 100% honest. But if we have a Manny Rosenkrantz on the mat, or if Max is there, or somebody of that level who I've taught for 17 years, and they could show a national, international level technique, I'd much rather them show it because I'm not competing. I'm not throwing on the pads. So yeah, but I do believe, I've always said this. You could watch Enter the Dragon, which is an all-time classic, and you see the hundreds of athletes all in line doing the same thing. I don't want to teach assembly line style. I just don't like it. Your strengths are different than Maya's strengths are different than Gary's strengths are different than Jude's strengths. And so why don't we play to everybody's strengths? And plus, you're the ones out there on the mat having to find that puzzle piece that works or that chess piece that works. It's not me. So for me to tell you, you have to do cross lefty saying, I mean, it seems kind of ridiculous to me. Again, I think we're in the minority in that regard. And I don't, dissuade anybody from teaching the way they want to teach. But for our club, it's worked. And I do think it's empowering to the athletes. We give our athletes a lot more freedom and ownership of the club. I don't see it as my club. It's not, I mean, I'm the head instructor and I have to be the captain of the ship some of the time, but it's everybody's club. Everybody's invested that way. And I like a lot of the input between you guys. Like you give each other input. And I think that there's real value to that. Yeah, it's a combination of things, but it's worked for us. And I will continue to teach that way. So,
I definitely think it's effective, and I enjoy training that way.
well, good. I'm glad. And last thing with that, pace is a big thing at our club. I
Mm.
feel like if you break stuff down to the 10th degree, especially post warm up, athletes get cold. There's a lot of people lose interest or lose focus. We keep a really fast pace with drilling to keep everybody engaged and involved throughout the hour 45. And that's something I believe in as well. Probably could add a little more technical instruction for sure. And maybe I will, but yeah, that's why we run things the way we do.
Awesome. Another question I had was, you've coached in some pretty interesting places all around the world at the highest levels. What's some of your favorite places that you've coached at?
So I think because my sister won the junior world championships, I've always had this really big respect and excitement for the junior worlds. It's the gateway to senior world and Olympic success. If you look at the results over the last 30 years, it's just there's a cause and effect there. I've been lucky enough. So USA Judo, specifically through between 2011 and 2020, I coached over 30 times Team USA for USA Judo at the junior level, all ages juniors, from the littles at the infantile Pan Ams to the cadets, which are U18, to the juniors, which are U21, and then the Paralympic team for athletes with visual impairment, and then a couple times with the senior team, all over the world. But I was lucky enough to be junior world head coach 3 times. And again, just because it's such a tough tournament, so many future Olympic medalists and world champions were there. Those were great. One that sticks out for sure is 2011 Junior World Championships in Cape Town, South Africa. It was my first one. Menomonee had both 73. We were allowed to send 2 athletes per division that time. We had both 73 key players at that tournament. Andrew Boogie Varga and Max Schneider, who a lot of people know from jiu-jitsu, judo, and wrestling. And I got to coach Max and Boogie at Cape Town, and the winner of that division was Shohei Ono. So, like, the fact that Shohei Ono was in a division with 2 of our athletes at the Junior World Championships in Cape Town, South Africa, that was a pretty cool moment, I'd say, for all 3 of us. And I was able to buy Shohei Ono and Takada, who's one of my all-time favorite players, McDonald's later that trip. So that's a highlight. Also, was able to coach the Junior Worlds in Abu Dhabi, which was really cool, just because I'd never been to that part of the world, and it was just a unique experience. And then in 2017, I think, yes, 2017, we had Max Antonou, Mackenzie Williams, who was a member of our club that time, awesome, and John Jane, who was training at our club, was more of an unattached athlete, but at the University of Chicago at the time, but was at our club, and I was able to coach them all. Now, Max has been with me since he was 5, and so Max was a first-year cadet, 15, making the Junior Worlds, which was unique and cool and really a great experience. And then John was the number 1 ranked junior in the world and made it to the bronze medal match. And so I was able to coach a bronze medal match at the Junior Worlds, John against Japan. He ultimately lost, but that's a pretty cool. You got to suit up for the medal matches. And so, yeah, those are Junior Worlds were all cool, but we've also taken full Menomonee teams to Denmark twice for the Danish Open, which was really cool, and to the Flanders Cup in Belgium, strictly Menomonee athletes with a couple scragglers who we loved. And, I've coached Team USA a ton, and it's been such a cool experience. But there is something when you bring your own athletes that have been with you, because Team USA for judo is a little different. Usually our teams are athletes from all over the country who you don't train with on a regular basis. So I built relationships traveling with the group for almost a decade, but I wasn't their club coach, wasn't their main coach. So when we took our athletes, so like coaching Mikey Mutz at the Cadet World Championships in Santiago, Chile, he beats Australia the first round. I'd been with Mikey the whole time since his first class. Same with Max. Manny and Max fought for the gold medal at the Danish Open. They'd both been with me since their very first judo class. So those are some of the really cool things. To be honest, like, the accolades are great, the tournaments are great, the medals are fantastic, but it's the relationships that you build over time at the dojo. I think we have a real family like atmosphere at the dojo. I'd like to believe it's a pretty unique culture. And yeah, so those are the lasting impressions and memories I have, are just going to battle with the athletes. I don't think by any stretch I'm the most technical coach of all, but I think what the athletes and athletes from all clubs, specifically when I was coaching Team USA, 5, 6, 7 times a year, would request me a lot of times to sit for them because they know I'll go to battle with them. There's no way I won't fight to the end for the athlete. Whether it's putting my neck out on the line with the referees sometimes, with the tournament directors, which has not always worked in my favor, but I always have the athlete's back. And I think that trust that you build goes a long way. I think the athletes have a lot more inside them than they even realize. And I've been pretty successful at helping them, get that last 10% out of them when they don't think they have it. That's led to some pretty great things. By the way, forgetting, Natalia Stanijevic. Natalia is one of our all-time great players. She won the Flanders Cup, the gold medal match in 12 seconds over a player either from South Africa or England, one of those, and huge hurrah. And she's just a great player. And then obviously been lucky enough to coach Nefeli Papadakis, not as often as I'd like, because she was traveling with the adult team, and I wasn't on staff most of the time with that, but she was our first Olympian, Tokyo 2021, because of the pandemic, and such a professional, on-point gripper. And we had between para, so athletes with visual impairment, cadets U18, juniors U21, and seniors, adults in judo, we'd had over a 8-year period, 7-year period, we'd had over 30 world team members. But having an Olympian definitely takes your club, especially because, right, the last 2 Olympics, USA Judo has been able to qualify 4 athletes, I think, in each of the last 2 Olympics. So it's not like it's that easy. The senior tour, the IGF tour is so difficult. It takes consistent results, traveling all over the world, putting your life on hold except for training, and a ton of money too. So to have an Olympian definitely gives you carte blanche a little. I mean, it's a big deal. And so Nefeli producing like she did against these giant 78 kilo, women, 6 foot tall women from the Netherlands. She's a great player, great athlete. Really excited for her. She was already a fantastic high level international player before she came to the club. We'd never take credit. We just augmented what she already had and tried to add to what she already had and support her in any way we could. And we had a ton of good training partners for her. But yeah, I mean, just some of the athletes. And I'm missing a million. I mean, I'm missing literally a million. Howard Wilson, Rob Anderson, now you, Gary, Maya, Joe DeFrino, Gabe Rubel, Adam Eckert, so many great athletes as members of the club. And it just happened organically. Like it was never a plan. I did want to be a top, highly competitive club, and I didn't see any reason, looking at the judo in the United States at the time, I didn't see any reason why we couldn't be a highly competitive club, but I never thought we'd be as competitive as we are, if I'm being totally honest. It just, we started as a boys and girls club, or we're still with a boys and girls club. And the athletes, when I first started, the boys and girls club only accepted children up to 12. So we'd get these players competitive, and at age 13, we'd have to hand them off to other dojos, which was a total bummer. So now the fact that we have athletes up to 75 years old is great. Yeah, we have a big military veteran program for local vets through Chicago Park District. I love that. It's a population I love working with. We work with special children's charities in the Chicago Park District for athletes with intellectual disabilities for years, had hundreds of athletes at various times with intellectual disabilities. And then our athletes with visual impairment, we've been one of the leaders in judo for people with visual impairment in the United States for 15 years now. The numbers have fluctuated, but at one time we had 15 to 20 athletes with visual impairment doing judo at the club on a weekly basis, which is a large number. So anyway, I know there's other athletes because I've had 3,000. I know there's other athletes that I'm missing that I'd like to mention, but I love you. So that's fine.
All right, so a bit of a change of pace. If you were a white belt in judo today, what are some of the things that you would prioritize to grow your judo as best as possible?
So I think judo is a very individual journey. Everybody's judo path and journey is different. And there's a 4-year-old white belt, there's an adult white belt. So I think it's different, but certain things are foundational. Knowing how to take a proper fall is something you need to know how to do. You're going to get thrown. And if you get thrown on your head too early in your career, you might say, you know what, there's better ways to spend time than this. And I don't disagree with you. So I think ukeme is super important. I just do. Now, there's different ways to teach an ukeme. Some people start throwing people really early on and you sink or swim. That's how my dad taught me to catch a baseball. He threw a hard ball as hard as he could at my face. And luckily, I learned how to catch it. So it was fine. But I think falling, I think also there's a degree of conditioning that should be involved. I think it's an activity, a sport that you need to be in some type of shape, ideally. So I think we, as you know, we spend probably a larger time. We do way less now that I've given the athletes even more control. But I think we spend quite a bit of time on warm-ups. But I think that core strength, flexibility, burst, speed burst, I think that's all really important. So I'd get in shape. I'd learn how to take a fall. Technique wise, I think you need something to the front. It's usually Seanagi. A lot of people are against drop. I'm not. I'm just not, because I think if you're against drop Seanagi, you're putting yourself at a huge detriment and deficit, because if the other person's willing to do drop Seanagi, which is the most successful competition throw, and you're not, you're playing with one hand a little bit tied behind your back. But something to the front, something to the back. Osoto, a lot of people use. I love Osoto. It's a very counterable technique done incorrectly, and beginners do it incorrectly a lot. So maybe Ouchi. So something to the back, something in the front. You need to grip well, something we need to improve on in our club, something I need to improve on with my teaching. But you have to know some basics with gripping, and you have to have a little newaza, because in adult judo, as we say at the club all the time, there's 3 ways to win on the mat. And realistically, there's 1, maybe 2. You could outgrip the person and maybe win on penalty standing, but you still have a greater percentage of opportunity to win on the mat than standing. So you should um, get a couple pins. And if you're an adult, you need a submission, even though in some novice cases they don't allow it in tournaments. But yeah, I'd say forward throw, backwards throw, some gripping, good conditioning, know how to take a fall, and then Newaza. And that's a great start. If you're there within a year plus, you're ahead of the game. And then just over time, you'll add to your tool belt with other, techniques. But yeah, Ochio, Soto, Sele, maybe Tayo, something like that. Really, really important. I wouldn't try to be average at 15 techniques, master of a million and or master of none. And I would try to get good at a couple things and be really proficient at those before moving forward.
Yeah, I've always heard that all black belts, it doesn't mean that you're good. It means you probably got good at one throw.
I'd be lucky if I'm good at one. I mean, I think my Tayo's decent, but my Harai was good 100 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I think belts are an interesting. That's a whole nother. We're historically under promoted as a club, which I'm
Mhm.
not against. It's not something in fact, I like the fact that our lower ranks a lot of times beat higher ranks, but people get really caught up with belts. And I get it because you put the time in and it's a way of seeing your progress in your journey. So the goal could be working towards a belt, but you can't lose sight of the journey where you're becoming a
Right.
better player and you're enjoying your time in the dojo. So yeah, but black belts, yeah, I mean, white belt, black belt, we're all just on the mat trying to get better. I'm still trying to get better every day. I have plenty of room to get better. I know that. So much room. And I have more responsibility in a lot of ways than you guys do because you're trying to get better mostly for your judo. I'm trying to get better for all your judo. If I give you bad advice in the dojo or in the chair at a tournament, shame on me, right? I mean, I shouldn't be sitting there. So yeah, I think we're just all striving to be the best we can. What I like at our club is, right now we've had a lot of the top players went away to school. The pandemic hit. They've retired. They've got a lot of them left. But Manny Rosenkrantz, who's a super underrated player, is still there. And there's no caste system at our club. Like Manny doesn't change in a different room. Manny doesn't skip warm-ups. Manny, I mean, once in a while, if he wants to, as a black belt, he can skip parts of the warm-up. But I love that about our club is the white belt who comes, and in some cases, the white belt their first day is more important that day than the people who've been there 15 years because we want them to feel welcome and warm and welcome them to the family. So yeah, I think being a white belt really exciting as an adult is an exciting prospect because there is a lot to learn. It can be kind of an overwhelming proposition in some ways, but if you embrace it, I think it's great because if you align yourself with good training partners, good staff, a good dojo with a safe environment, you could really enjoy regardless of what age you are, what athletic ability you have, you could really enjoy the journey and make it a lifelong. You could be doing judo. Some of my senseis were doing judo well into their 80s.
Yeah, because most people make it a goal to get the black belt. But by the time you get the black belt, you fell in love with the sport and the process that why would you quit there?
Yeah, I agree. It's good to set goals. I think it's a tough sport to train. What you guys do, I have so much respect for the athletes who are in the trenches doing the training, competing in tournaments. There's so many easier activities than judo. So I think having a goal of a competition or a belt is important. I think that when you put in time, effort, and energy, and you think you're progressing, those belts are important. They keep you going. I mean, first of all, when you get to black belt, the first five black belts are just black belts, right? So it's just certificates. So it's not like you go out, you're at a party, and you say, "Yeah, I'm a third degree, but I'm a fourth." I mean, I would never do that. I don't think that's what you do. So, like you said, at that point, I think you have the bug. You're probably a lifer at that point. You do it for the love of it and just for lifestyle and improving yourself. But yeah, that's tough. I mean, our sweet spot still is kids, and kids are totally driven by something like a belt promotion. That's without that, they're not mature enough yet to realize I'm getting better, but I have to show patience for the belt. You know, there are martial art disciplines that are far easier to get belts in than judo, but I'm not willing to bend on that. I really feel like the sense of accomplishment when you've earned your belt is something you have true pride in. And also, it shows that hard work pays off. And that can go from judo to school to your work life to your personal relationships. And you see that if you put in time and effort and energy, hard work does eventually pay off. It's not always instant gratification, which is really tough in today's society sometimes.
Great answer. Last question. What are your thoughts on judo as a self-defense?
Super interesting question. Over the years, there's been plenty of times I've been offered self defense workshops, classes, and I'm pretty hesitant by and large because I teach judo as an Olympic sport and Paralympic sport. I've never shied away from that or deviated from that. I do think there's some practical self defense that you could use from judo. I certainly see that, but a lot of it isn't necessarily the techniques themselves. It's just the confidence you carry yourself with or an awareness that you have. I feel confident if I push came to shove that I could protect myself in certain situations because of my judo training. But I wouldn't do a drop seoi-nage on somebody on the street necessarily. I just feel like, yeah, it's an awareness and a confidence. There's a kata, where they have knives and guns, and that's great. I still wouldn't go looking for a fight just because you're a judo practitioner. I wouldn't, but I do think there's some practical self-defense, but I never sell it as a self-defense on the street type of sport. Just not That's not what I do. There's some people who specialize in that, and that's their thing. And God bless them. I hope it works. But for us, it's more as a sport, and it's always been. And I just didn't. I don't feel like it would add a ton to our club, and I don't feel comfortable enough teaching it to get students in the door. We have enough students. You could always have more students, but I don't. Just why, like you see a million dojos, street corner dojos that have 15 disciplines that they teach at once. I'm not saying they don't teach solid judo. I don't know that for a fact. But when you come to Menomonee, you're just going to learn judo. And I think I like to stay in my lane, stick with what I know, and it's worked well for me. So, yeah, again, I think feel confident if you do judo and you train hard. If something looks iffy, get the heck out of there and let somebody else fight. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we do what we do best. Clearly have the medals and all the accolades.
It's a strong club. We're never one of the ones who stand on a pedestal and say we're number one. But the reality is we have 30 plus years of really, really solid players, solid citizens. And if you ask me point blank, if we're one of the top clubs in the country, I would say absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that. Certainly pre-pandemic, there's no question about that. But just in general, very well-rounded athletes, successful in the classroom, successful in their work life. A lot of them successful in their personal relationships, and that's what we want. We want well-rounded, good members of the community. One of the main principles, certainly, there's Seiro Coseño, maximum efficiency with minimum effort, but Jita Kyoye, mutual welfare and benefit. And that's really what we preach and practice at the dojo. It's important to us. We try whatever we take from the sport, we want our athletes to give back to the dojo and the community, surrounding communities. And I think almost all of our athletes step up and do a wonderful job with that.
Sensei Brett, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. For anybody interested in trying judo in Chicago, he's Sensei Brett Wolf at Menomonee Judo Club. So thanks.
All right, awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Dylan.